Are the Habs this year's Cinderella team just happy to make the playoffs, but the clock is ready to strike midnight? Or are they a wolf in sheep's clothing ready to pounce on the Caps team that's only won 2 of 6 games since Alexander Ovechkin broke Gretzky's record? To discuss that, here's Frankie Corrado. Frankie, did the Caps expend so much energy in Ovi's historic run that the Habs can now jump on them when the puck drops on Game 1 tonight?
There's a chance, Gino. That's the biggest challenge for the Washington Capitals right now. It was an emotional year for them. They were chasing the Alex Ovechkin goal record, and they got it. Such an emotional high. Everyone's on board. And once you get it, it felt like there was this jubilant moment. And then what? A little bit of a deflationary kind of situation afterwards where everyone comes back down to earth and the games still go on. You're still playing for the team aspect, the team goal that you're trying to achieve this season, but it's hard to get back up to that emotional level that you had once you achieved that goal. So, you know, you look at this series and you think, what's the biggest challenge for the Washington Capitals? It's internally. It's getting themselves back up to that emotional intensity, and so bringing that into the playoffs. And we've seen it now the last little while in the regular season. That was a challenge for the Washington Capitals, finding that purpose in these last few games. They're going to have to find that same purpose early on in the series against the Montreal Canadiens, who've been playing desperate hockey for quite some time.
Okay, Frankie, I get what you're saying. Overall, the Caps were definitely the better team this year. But from the Four Nations break until the end of the season, the Habs were 4th in the entire NHL in points per game. Only the Blues, Leafs, and Knights had better records over that stretch. The Caps were 13th. Frankie, that's a 2-month stretch where the Habs were actually playing better hockey than the Caps. What were they doing so much better down the stretch? And can they keep that going when the playoffs start for them tonight?
Gino, the Habs were just a very resilient group. They were never out of a game. They were never down and out. And they had a lot of pushback, whether it was physical, like they always answered the bell. But anytime they were down in a game, you felt like the game actually wasn't over. They scratched and clawed. And, you know, I kind of look at a few things that worked well for Montreal since the Four Nations break. First of all, their top line, one of the best, if not the best top line in the NHL for that duration. That line really did a good job of carrying the mail. They're fast, they can make plays with the puck, they can score in different ways, whether it's off the rush or the offensive zone. So everything kind of starts with that top line. And then if you look at, you know, what other players were providing with that group, you know, call it the reclamation line, but it's Dvorak, Anderson, and Gallagher. They were so good at hopping over the boards and being a presence for checking the puck, getting it back, spending time in the offensive zone, and that line brought a lot to the table. And I would say, Gino, for a lot of the season, they were producing, but they weren't exactly capitalizing on their chances. Then they started capitalizing on their chances, and that made a big difference for that forward group. And of course, you get into some other storylines like what Lane Hudson was doing. Montreal improved so much defensively. Marty St. Louis deserves a lot of credit for that. And Samuel Montembeault was really good, like very consistent from the Four Nations break all the way through the regular season's end. And so that kind of stuff has to continue for the Canadiens. And there's no reason why it can't, because those are things that are in their control.
But Frankie, there were some times where I felt like the Habs were playing with fire. So much has been made of the Habs' ability to come back in games. Nick Suzuki's been awesome. 5 OT winners. Only Leon Draisaitl had more this season. Being able to come back has been great. But now things are going to really tighten off in the playoffs. Could having to come back be the kiss of death in the playoffs for the Habs?
This is my biggest concern with the Montreal Canadiens going into the playoffs, Gino. The fact that they have led games for the 4th fewest time in the NHL this season. It's only San Jose, Anaheim, and Seattle who have spent less time leading games this year. It's just under 1,300 minutes. And when you look at where the other playoff teams are at, the Minnesota Wild are the next closest team. They spent the 12th fewest minutes leading hockey games. So it's great that you can come back and win games in the third period. The Montreal Canadiens led the NHL in third period comeback wins this year. Like, that makes a resilient group. But you go into a playoff series where you're already the underdogs, you're playing against a team in Washington that's deep and can score. you're going to have to find ways to score first and be comfortable playing with the lead, because there could be moments in this series where it's just too hard to come back. And a coach like Spencer Carberry, he's really smart. We saw that this year. What he got out of this group in Washington, he's going to sniff out some tendencies that make it hard for Montreal to come back in games. So playing with the lead is paramount for Montreal. It's just not something they did a lot of this season.
The Caps are the second highest scoring team in the regular season. Only Tampa had a higher scoring offense. The Habs D was bottom third in the league this season. Frankie, did they have the ability to tighten things up now that they're in the playoffs, or could Ovi and the Caps offense just overwhelm Montreal?
There's always a chance that Ovi and the Washington Capitals offense is going to overwhelm Montreal, but I would say this when it comes to Montreal defensively. You almost can't look at it with the scope of the entire season, because until December, they were far and away the worst defensive team in the NHL. It wasn't even close. But from that point on, they improved so drastically that the numbers from October to December really skew what they were doing when they had made their improvements. And now you look at how they have done, from the Four Nations face-off break until now, one of the better defensive teams in the NHL. So they found something and they improved a lot in a short period of time. But that's going to get tested against this Washington Capitals team, because if you go back to the start of the year, like the biggest thing that Washington was coaching and wanting to improve on was offense. It wasn't something that came easy to them last year. Spencer Carberry spent a lot of time, whether it was in training camp or in the early goings of the season, finding new ways to generate offense. And we saw the results that produced. Alex Ovechkin had an unbelievable year. Breaks Gretzky's goal-scoring record. Dylan Strome was incredible as well. A guy like Alexei Protas, riding shotgun with those guys, was excellent. Tom Wilson, another good offensive year for him. Like, these types of things really do fly under the radar, when you look at what Washington did this year. So, it's a team that really improved a lot in a short period of time defensively in Montreal, and a team that right off the hop had to get better offensively in the Washington Capitals, and they did that. Both of these teams executed. Now the question is, Gino, who executes in this series where we know where the priorities were for both of these teams during the regular season?
And with that, my friends, the stage is set. The Caps, the number 2 seed in the playoffs, versus the Habs, the lowest seed to reach this postseason. Can the Cinderella run continue, or is the clock ready to strike midnight? Game 1 goes tonight in Washington.